Hi, Algebra 2. This is Unit 9, Lesson 1 and 2, and we already started this yesterday in class, so you already have the first part of it, so we're on the second part right now, talking about complex numbers. So what is a complex number? All numbers fall into a very broad category known as complex numbers. Complex numbers can always be thought of as a combination of a real number, all right, and the real number part of it is going to be the a part of it, and then the imaginary number, and that will be the bi part of it. So a is the real part of the number, bi is the imaginary part of the number, and you can't combine the two together, right? They're going to be separate. And just like real numbers, complex numbers, we're going to be able to add them, subtract them, multiply them. So that's what we're going to practice. All right, the basic thing that you need to remember, though, is that the real components can combine with real components and imaginary with imaginary. So when I'm adding or subtracting them, only the real parts can be added or subtracted, and only the imaginary parts can be added or subtracted with each other. All right, so to add or subtract complex numbers, you're going to combine like terms, and then you're going to show your solution in an a plus bi form. So let's see how easy this is. So in 8a, all right, I'm going to look at the real part of it. I'm going to combine those real parts, and then I'm going to combine those imaginary parts. So negative 2 plus 6 is 4, and then 7i plus 2i is 9i, and that's my answer. All right, I'll highlight them again. So I got my imaginary parts I'm going to put in green, and I'm going to put my real parts in yellow. And again, you can just combine like terms. So 8 plus 12 is 20, and 4i plus negative 1i, right, there's a 1 in front of there, is just going to be 3i. Now you have to be careful when you are subtracting though. So if I'm looking at C, okay, everything is getting subtracted. Again, I'll highlight the real parts and the imaginary parts. So this negative sign goes with the 2, and that negative sign goes with the negative 7i. So 5 minus 2 is 3, and then 3i minus negative 7i is actually 3i plus 7i, which gives me 10i. All right? If you wanted to write it out like negative 3 plus 5i, and then minus negative 8 is a positive 8, and minus 2i is a minus 2i. You could do that. So again, I distributed that negative sign to everything inside, and now I can just combine those imaginary parts, and I can combine those real parts together. So whatever is easier for you is fine. So negative 3 plus 8 is 5, and 5i plus negative 2i is 3i. All right, so that's adding and subtracting. Now multiplying complex numbers, all right? Let's see how this works. So I have radical negative 3 times radical negative 6. Well, you guys know a negative times a negative is a positive, so this is radical positive 18. And they do want us to simplify all of these, so radical 18 simplifies to radical 9 and radical 2. So that gives me 3 radical 2. All right? On B, I'm going to multiply the numbers in front. So 5 times 6 is 30. And then I'll multiply the numbers under the radical. Radical 10 times radical negative 2 is radical negative 20. All right, so the 30 is hanging out in front. The negative 20 I'm going to break down to a perfect square, radical 4 and radical 5. And then that negative is going to be separate. Okay, because remember, so I got the perfect square radical 4, which is 2. So this is actually 30 times 2. The radical 5 is going to stay radical 5. And the negative 1, the radical negative 1, remember, radical negative 1 equals I. So that's also going to come out of the radical. So this is actually 60I radical 5. Okay, let's try one where we have to FOIL. So 3 times 5 is 15. 3 times 4i is 12i. 2i times 5 is 10i. And 2i times 4i is 8i squared. I always get 4 terms, and I can combine those middle terms together. So I have 15 plus 22i, And then remember, I squared is negative 1. So this is just really 8 times negative 1, which is positive 8. And then I can combine the 15 and I'm sorry, it's a negative 1, so that's a negative 8. I can combine the 15 and the negative 8 together, and I get 7 plus 22i. And the last one that we're going to do here is conjugates. Okay, so remember with those conjugates, those middle terms are actually going to drop out. But let's FOIL it so you can see that. 10 times 10 is 100. 10 times I is negative 10i. I times 10 is positive 10i. And I times negative I is negative I squared. Those two middle terms cancel each other out. And I have 100 minus I squared. And remember, I squared is negative 1, so I really have 100 minus negative 1, which is just 101. Okay, so we're going to practice all of this adding and subtracting and multiplying tomorrow.